Hello, all heroes, and welcome back to Invincible Guarding the Globe, or should I say, the Invincible Guarding the Globe tier list. Yes, I am finally making a tier list. Now, just to get some housekeeping out of the way here. First of all, as usual, as is the thing with tier lists, this is 100% my opinion. You don't necessarily need to take this as gospel. There are other tier lists out there in the world, especially if you go on the Discord. My opinions might vary from other people's opinions, and that is a-okay. There are some heroes I like more than others, some heroes that other people might value higher that I might not myself go too crazy for. So, we are going to go as such. We're going to really try and factor in everything, including but not limited to skill ups, which if a character's main perk is really locked behind high level skill ups, that is going to be a detriment, and we are going to factor in how good they are out the box, but also do factor in their power levels as well. So, like I said, big ol' opinion. First things first, we'll put the obvious. No, actually, I do want to give you a chance. We're going to put the obvious, the green ones, to you who loves the Flax and Soldier. If you're still around, you get what you get. So, yeah. So, first of all, we are going to start with Alan. Alan is the quintessential. I also do have the game pulled up on the screen so that I can look at their abilities when needed. Alan is the quintessential, like, defender. He has a very nice death save, first of all, that then proceeds to heal him. As long as the healing does outpace the damage he's receiving, that can keep him alive for a hot minute. Bonus points if you do actually get him skilled up, because the healing goes up to like 30% of his HP, and then he gets some self-healing. So pretty good stuff. He's got a taunt built into his main ability, which is always good, and he does even get some stat boosts every now and then if he gets below 10% HP. He's not really meant for damage, but he's a defender, so that makes sense. He just is really good at what he does. Easy S tier, in my opinion. Now, Angstrom Levy is an interesting one. His first ability is summoning a T-Rex, which just basically does damage and does some debuffing to the enemy. But that ability really doesn't come into its own until you unlock his Epic Plus ability, where if the enemy is below a certain HP threshold, it becomes an insta-kill. It's 10% if you get him maxed out without that maxing out his skill. It's 7%, so not a huge buff there, but it also applies a wound and reduces some ability cooldowns, so it's okay. The biggie is what he does with the Mauler twins. The problem with that is that he is completely locked out of a chunk of his abilities if he's not with the Mauler twins. He's meant to be in a Mauler twin team, period. And that makes him difficult to use. You put him in a Mauler team, he's great. Outside of that team, not so much. And for that reason, I think we are going to give him a B. A B, keeping in mind that you're only ever going to use him in a Mauler team. If he's in a Mauler team, a properly built Mauler team, he'd be an A. But factoring in his merit on his own, he is extremely specific, so we're going to put him in B. Now then, Aquarius. We are going to give the rares the time of day, at least for now. So we're going to talk about Mr. Fishman himself. He is a support character. His first ability summons a water stream that deals damage and removes a buff on them, so a nice little buff cleanse. He reduces debuff effects on any original Guardians of the Globe characters on his team, and he can create a shield. Really, the most useful thing with this character is the shield. It can be pretty sturdy, but nothing else on here is really all that great. Reducing the effects of debuffs on original Guardians of the Globe characters, first of all, is extremely specific, and is not really all that much. At base is 3%, and even if for some reason you skilled him up, it's just going to be a 6% reduction, which is basically nothing. So we're going to put him in C. Now then, Battle Beast. Battle Beast is next on the list here. Battle Beast has an interesting history on my channel, as I really do tend to just totally shun him in favor of other abilities, but what he does really well. He is the definition of a glass cannon. His Claws Out ability does really high damage, and gives himself a little bit of self-healing. He does give the team Life Leech against Viltrumites, which is pretty good if you can stack it with some other stuff. But his Life Leech on his own is nothing crazy. You kind of have to compare it with some other things. With his Exceptional Plus ability, he gets some wounds on his basic attacks, which is, okay, pretty good extra damage. And then the Worthy Opponent ability is the interesting one. Basically, when the target's at a certain HP, he deals higher damage, but takes more damage. And then if you do get it skilled up, he deals even more damage, and then he can kind of bounce between characters a little bit. That bottom ability especially is what makes him very interesting, because even though he hurts his own defenses, the damage he does is immense. As long as he can survive, yeah, he does some damage, but you do have to build him and make sure he doesn't get totally clapped immediately. So we'll put him in A. Now then, Adam Eve is our next character on my list here. Adam Eve's an interesting one to rank, because at base, she's okay. She only throws around one shield, her stat buffs and shield perks are nothing crazy, and her hurt and heal ability is okay. I mean, she only throws one projectile and it triggers once every 30 seconds, so it's kind of meh. However, you get her skilled up, and she goes from 0 to hero in a hurry. Her main ability goes from shields on herself and one ally to shields on herself and all 4 allies, basically being an entire team protection ability. And her hurt and heal ability goes up from 1 projectile all the way up to 5, meaning you have a much higher chance of dealing either more damage to your enemies or doing much more healing to your allies. And she actually does some pretty good damage if you do max out the ability. 300% of her max HP is nothing to sneeze at for a character like her. Additionally, the Strength Through Shielding ability, again, especially once you do get it cranked up, actually does do some decent healing. So, like, here's the thing. Fully skilled up Adam Eve is S tier. But we have to factor in the fact that it's expensive. It is hella expensive. So we're gonna give her like A tier with honors. If there was an A+, she'd be there. But the fact that she needs those skill ups to make it all the way to S tier is putting her down just a teensy tiny bit in my eyes here. But that is not a detriment. Like I said, A+, if that was on the tier list, she would be A+. So just kind of take that for what you will. Now then, Black Samson, another rare character. Nothing too crazy here. He has an ability that pushes back enemies for his main ability, and then does a taunt. He reduces his damage received when fighting married to the mob characters. It only works on him, doesn't work on other allies. And then he can regenerate a little bit of his HP when he goes below 30%. Nothing crazy here. Nothing really to talk about. Easy C tier there. Now, Bulletproof. Mr. Bulletproof is an interesting conundrum, because he is unironically like Invincible Light. First of all, his main ability, Bulletproof, pushes the enemy in front of him 3 times following the target, dealing 370% damage. And then if you do get that leveled up, he increases his own critical damage. That critical damage does matter, because for most of his other abilities, he is crit focused. Especially if you take a look at keeping up the momentum, after performing 7 critical strikes, he increases his attack stat and becomes immune for 3 seconds. And then if you do power that up, the immunity is still 3 seconds, but his attack stat gets boosted a little bit. And then for his last ability, he is immune to push and pull effects and increases his critical chance by 50% when an enemy tries to push or pull him. So his main thing is his Exceptional Plus ability, where when he does a certain number of critical strikes, being 7, he does become immune. Yeah. If you really invest in him, you really power up his gear, give him some seismic gear, maybe some omnipotent gear if you're really wanting to give him some love, and get that crit stat up. Give him some artifacts to give him his crit stat up, like the Reaniman arm or something with a built-in substat of crit. Then you can get somewhere. But the fact that it is so aggressively situational to make him work does hurt him a little bit in my eyes. He's not bad. It's just the level of investment you have to give him. He's like Adam Eve, only he doesn't start out good. Adam Eve starts out good and becomes extremely good. He starts out meh and becomes good. So we're gonna kind of put him in B, I'm thinking. Not bad, just a little troubled in design. Now then, we have Mr. Darkwing over here. Darkwing coming to us as an attacker. He's an interesting one because one of his main abilities, on a roll, his Exceptional Plus, gains a massive damage buff if you skill it up. On a roll, starts out, when Darkwing performs a critical hit, his next basic attack deals damage to the intended target and 25% damage to a secondary target. That goes all the way up to 205% to a secondary target. That's pretty good, actually. And it's a shame that the rest of his abilities are not too crazy, because if you do skill up on a roll, that's a lot of extra damage if you're getting crits. But again, it's kind of like Bulletproof, where you do need crits. So, in light of that, I think we'll give him a low B. I'll be nice and give him a low B, just because he does technically have the potential. Now then, Doc Seismic. Do we even need to discuss this? He is an easy S tier by a hilarious margin. In fact, I'm going to put him over Alan. Ironically, this weird old dude is totally busted. First of all, he's a powerful ranged character, which I have not really said it before now, but powerful ranged characters do have quite a bit of stay in GTA Ops. Additionally, his skills are nuts. 2 of his abilities have built-in stuns, one of which is for 3 seconds and the other of which is for 1.5 seconds and can go up to 3 seconds if you do max him out. Again, if you max him out, the cooldowns go to like 10 seconds each, which means you're getting friggin' 3-second stuns every 10 seconds. Additionally, his main ability does a metric ton of damage, and his Aftershock ability is actually pretty good, now that we've got more Viltrumites in the game. Viltrumite enemies see their energy defense reduced by 20%. In this day and age, where Thula and Lucan are a thing, that's actually pretty good. So, I mean, really there's nothing else to talk about there. Doc Seismic is just freaking good. Just build him. Just build him. He doesn't look... It's Seismic. He doesn't look like much, but he has got some serious muscle. Next is Damien Darkblood. Damien's an interesting one. For a while there, he was one of your only options for From World Beyond characters, until the faction actually filled itself out. His main ability is a defense decrease, basically, while doing some extra damage to enemies. A debuff's never a bad thing, helps your other allies. And then his Dark Alliance ability, his second ability, is interesting. When an enemy dies, Darkblood heals any member of Not of This Earth for 5% of his max HP. And then when an ally dies, he increases the critical chance of his allies from Not of This Earth. There's an interesting argument to be made that you could pair him with someone like Universa if you wanted to really increase the crits. But do you really want to invest in that? And then his second ability is a silence effect, which is okay. What he does well. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in B. We'll put him over Darkwing. Not a high B, but we'll give him B. Now, Duplicate. I love Duplicate. I love Duplicate a lot. And that doesn't necessarily mean that she is fantastic, but the fact that she can create a copy of herself is actually pretty dang cool. Even if the copy might not be the craziest thing in the world, at base it starts out at 25% of her stats, I believe, and then if you max her out, that goes up to 45%. It does draw enemy aggro, so even though it's not like a taunt per se, it can split up the enemies a bit. It's also nice that for her second ability, she can grant some extra damage on enemies, which is pretty okay. And then if we take a look at her main ability here, she does have a 3.5 second stun, which is pretty good. It's a short cooldown of only 15 seconds. And then if you do really crank it up, she actually does get a shield, which is okay. Not okay enough to put her above B, but we'll give her a high B. I'm a little biased on this one. I'd love to put her in A, but if I'm putting aside my bias, she is good, but not like A level good. I can't say she's as good as like Adam Eve or Battle Beast. Now, Flaxen Leader is an interesting one. Because here's the thing with Flaxen Leader. In combat, downright worthless. Nothing. I would put him in D right now if we were just talking about combat. But his second ability, Invading Force, when fighting against humans, a Flaxen Leader increases the resources obtained from GDA ops, makes him effectively a must-have character. At least one copy, and you could even get away with having more. Because you put him into a GDA op, which is immensely important, you get extra rewards. That can even apply to event ops. As long as there's a human on the enemy team, that's more loot, and that adds up in a hurry. So there's a weird thing with him where his combat power, D tier. His necessity though, A tier, just for his invading force. So with that said, I'll put him in like, I guess I'll put him in mid B, just because I literally don't know what else to do with him. Yeah, that's all I got. Of course, you're supposed to be down there. That's all I really got, because, like I said, he's useless in battle, but he's essential for GTA ops. It's a weird little paradox on your boy Flaxen Leader. Next, we have Green Ghost. She's kind of an offensive support character. Basically, what she can do is she can turn invisible a lot with her hide and heal. No, excuse me, that actually applies to the ally. She can make her ally invisible when they drop below a certain HP threshold, and then her can't see me, she can turn herself invisible when she goes below a certain HP threshold. Her max HP effect from Friends in Need is pretty useless. But then her main ability actually does come with a stun, and she can inflict that stun on 2 enemies. And then if you do powered up a bit, that stun goes up to 3 seconds, and she can even steal buffs. Requires a bit of investment on that one though, but the invisibility is nothing to sneeze at. So with that in mind, we're gonna put her in A. Not gonna put her above Battle Beast, but Green Ghost was like my first Omnipotent Plus character, so I'm a little partial to her, and the invisibility effects are nice. Next we have Mr. Invincible himself. I'm gonna give him a low S. Now he is S tier, because what he does really freaking well. And what does he do, you may ask? Damage. An actual ton of damage. He's supersonic, he does heavy hits, and if you even get it skilled up, it goes from 3 hits to 5 hits, which is a massive damage boost. As long as he's fighting with a last line of defense ally, which can include Adam Eve or Omni Man, the entire team's ability cooldown is reduced, which is pretty dang potent, actually. His third ability is basically a life save, because when he gets below a certain threshold, he just becomes immune for several seconds and can do basically more damage, while not having to worry about being killed. which is pretty great. And then his go for the big guy ability is particularly interesting, because basically at the beginning of the battle and then throughout the battle, he gets a power boost and will automatically go after the strongest enemy. Usually being an attacker who probably does not have the defensive stats that other characters might have. Like, let's say he goes after a battle beast, he's going to really try to tear up that battle beast. So yeah, like I said, what he does really well. He's simple. He is a simple character, but he's just got that invincibility. What he does so very well, as to be expected from the main character of the literal series, the namesake of the series. Next, we have Isotope. Isotope is an odd one, because he is strictly, like, teleporting and throwing people around for whatever reason. He can, for his main ability, he can teleport an enemy to the backline and steal a buff. If you power him up, he just steals more buffs, basically. Increases max HP if married to the mob characters, that's meh. And then he can kind of save an ally by teleporting them to the backline and healing them a little bit. I mean, it's okay. Even if you get it like maxed out, the healing's actually pretty decent. At base, it's 10% for every second for 3 seconds, and then at max, it's 20% of his max HP per second for 3 seconds. There's just no place for him, unfortunately, because, yeah, you're teleporting your ally back, but that's not going to protect them, really, so we're going to put him in C. Next, we have Kursk. Kursk is an interesting one, because he is, first of all, a ranged character, and a pretty zippy one at that. For his main ability, he casts Lightning Bolt, dealing 400% base damage per second for 2 seconds, and applies a 10% damage reduction for 3 seconds. That's actually pretty good, and then if you do get him powered up, the defense reduction goes for a full 7 seconds. That's not bad. That's some real damage. His next ability is nothing too crazy when fighting against any of the original Guardians of the Globe. Kursk increases his team's damage over time by 5%. If you are using a DOT team with wounds or something like that, it can be helpful, and the enemy only needs to have one original Guardians of the Globe character, so, you know, the Immortal or somebody like that, somebody who is a little more popular, could trigger this, which can be useful. And then his last ability, Electric Storm here, he generates a ball of electricity over his head. 2 rays emerge from it, dealing 100% base damage to random targets and applying damage over time. And then basically that just gets a damage buff if you power it up and a few more rays. I am going to give this guy a low A. A-. He is an A- character, but he's a ranged character who can do some really high damage. I can see that being usable in things like GTA Ops, which, you know, let's be honest here, is basically 50% of the game at least. So if you're good in GTA Ops, you're good in at least 50% of the game. That counts for something. So we're going to stick him in a low A. Next we have Lucan, and Lucan I have not actually officially reviewed on the channel yet. Heck, I don't even have him. So this could be a little clunky for me to go over because I can't actually see his skill ups right now, but that is okay. First of all, a deserved death. Lucan slaps one random enemy, which is a hilarious way to word that, pushing them and dealing 125% of his base attack damage. He increases his defense by 50% for 5 seconds every time an ally or enemy Viltrumite dies in battle. This applies to, of course, your Viltrumites or the enemy's Viltrumites. Fighter to the end. When Lucan reaches 0 HP, 100%, wow. No, the opposite of that, 0% HP. He jumps towards the enemy with the least defense, dealing 75% of his max HP as damage, and then dies. That's an interesting one, and that's the one where I really, really wish I could see his skill ups right now, but alas, I actually can't. So, you know, boo. But Especially if you got that skilled up, I could see that doing some nice damage. Like, you could really punch a hole in somebody as kind of his last stand there. And then Viltrumite still makes right. Every 20 seconds, Lucan and Thula attack the target with the strongest attack stat using a combined movement that deals 20% damage and taunts the enemy. If Thula is on the team, both heroes receive a 20% attack increase for 3 seconds. Now, unlike Angstrom, where he is totally hamstrung if you don't put him in with Mauler Twins, I feel like Lucan can still work if he's not in there with Thula. Thula obviously grants him some nice muscle, and that attack increase for himself and Thula is pretty dang good, but I feel like he could still work without Thula. Now, do I think he's as good a defender as Alan? No, and here's why. He doesn't really have any built-in healing. He's more of a bruiser defender, which we'll see another one of those in Monster Girl in a bit here. So, being a bruiser defender is not bad at all. But it doesn't make him quite as good as a true defender like Alan, or as a tried and true bruiser defender like Monster Girl, in my opinion. Now, to be fair, I have not used this guy. So it's not like I can say for sure, so take my opinion on Lucan with a grain of salt. But I'm gonna put him in A. We'll put him, oh shoot. What did I do? I think I moved a Flax later. I don't remember where you were before. I think he was there. Oh, I moved Isotope. That's what I did. There we go. We're going to put Lucan in A. We'll put him over Battle Beast. Like I said, it does not help that I can't see his skill ups, so I don't know what extra stats or abilities he gains. That's hurting. That's hurting the rankings a little bit. But I'm going to put him in A, just because he does seem pretty solid just on paper. Next, we have the fire guy whose name I don't remember. Who are you? Do I have a copy of you? Yes, I do. Magmaniac. Let's see what he's got here. He generates a straight line of lava, dealing damage and applying burn. Basically some damage over time. He reduces the enemy's max HP by 4% if he is in a team with a Married to the Mob character. That goes up to 9%. It's okay. It kind of makes the enemy a little bit squishier, but it's still nothing too crazy. And then Ready, Aim, Fire, he prioritizes stunned enemies when attacking, and his base attacks against stunned enemies apply burn damage. Nothing crazy there, honestly. His damage is fine and dandy, and he is a ranged character, which again does give him some value. We'll give him a high C, which, I mean, as they say, C's get degrees. But he's nothing special in my opinion. Next we do have Martian Man. Probably going to be another one here who's not too special because he just doesn't do much. His main ability does some decent damage and can cleanse buffs. If you get him powered up, he reduces the enemy's crit hit chance, which your mileage may vary on that one a little bit. He can increase the enemy's ability cooldowns. And then when he does reach a certain amount of HP, he can kind of hide for a minute and heal a little bit. It's nothing crazy. We'll give him C under Aquarius, I'm thinking. Now then, we have the Mauler Twins, and the Mauler Twins are in a tough state because of their reliance on each other and Angstrom. We'll talk about the melee one first. So the melee Mauler is, of course, the melee version. His main ability, he'll target an enemy and dash towards him, dealing some damage and applying a stun. It's a 1-second stun at base. His dynamic duo ability, his second ability, is kind of where he comes into himself, where the entire team gets a physical attack and physical defense buff for each Mauler on the team, excluding himself. This is the bread and butter of the Mauler team, because it grants a ton of stats. But of course, it does demand that you are in a Mauler team. And there's nothing really wrong with that, but it is still a restriction that is noticeable. For his next ability, he empowers his attacks to increase his damage and can push back the enemy a little bit. And then his last ability, when he reaches a certain amount of HP, he can bounce the damage he receives and can heal for a bit. It's actually got a pretty short cooldown of about 10 seconds, but the question is if he would last that long. I'm going to put him in B under Angstrom just because, like I said, it's kind of necessary to have them together, and I'm kind of reflect that in the rankings too. Spoiler alert there, because we now have the ranged Mauler. Now, of the two, I would say that the ranged Mauler is better. His main ability, Overload, shoots a rocket that can apply some burn, which is pretty okay actually. His genetic power ability is the exact same as the previous Mauler twin, only it's for energy attack and energy defense for each Mauler on the team. He's got a Frozen Bullets effect, which can silence the enemy for a little bit. And then his last ability, which probably makes him the most useful, if there is an enemy at melee range, he does an area of effect attack in front of him, dealing 115% base damage and pushing back all enemies. That's what makes him a little bit better in my opinion, because most ranged characters are pretty defenseless against melee characters. Usually if a melee character can get up close, they can get tore up pretty quick, but the ranged Mauler twin can defend himself a little bit. So with that in mind, I'm going to rank him under Angstrom, but over the melee Mauler. Like I said, they're kind of meant to be together. If those three were one character, like if we lumped them as one, they would be A tier. Their team can punch way above their weight. But if we're talking on their individual merits, we got to keep them in B tier. But I would give the caveat that you should build them. If there's any characters in B tier you should build, it's the Mauler twins and Angstrom, because if you put them all together, they punch way above their weight. Like if I was ranking team comps, they'd be A at least, maybe even S for how cheap they are in relation to, in relevant to how much they can actually do. The value per cost is pretty dang good with them. Now then, we now have Monster Girl. Now, Monster Girl has been a mainstay defender for a long time, and for very good reason. Her main ability is an AoE attack that does stun the enemy very briefly. And then she can get some life leech. She can increase the defense of Guardians of the Globe allies by a certain amount of her max or of her HP. Her third ability, Extra Bit of Monster, she gets a permanent attack boost based on her current HP. So as long as she has high HP, she can actually punch out some fools pretty easily. And then her basic attacks can dispel enemy shields. And instead of receiving shields, she receives an extra healing effect equal to 65% of the shield value, meaning that she can pair really well with characters like Adam Eve. Instead of getting that shield, she basically just gets a whole lot more healing to keep her attack power high. And being able to punch through enemy shields is pretty dang good. I'm going to give her a low S. We'll put her under... Oops. Oh dear. What have I done? Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. You were supposed to be down there. There we go. Gotta stop doing that. I'm moving too fast. We're gonna give her low S. Reason I'm saying low S is that for what she is as a bruiser defender, she is really dang good. And she can sustain herself a little bit because her main ability does have some life leech. I still consider Alan better, and I'll be curious to see if y'all agree with that. I don't want to say that's a hot take, but it might be a lukewarm take that Alan is better than Monster Girl, but that is just an opinion. Next, we do have Omn Man. Omn Man is like the classic attacker of the game. Usually, especially in the beginning of the game, there's a question of who's better, Omn Man or Invincible. His first ability does good damage to enemies in front of him and applies a defense debuff. When fighting against humans, the whole team gets a small life leech. It kind of comes into its own if you power him up, but it starts out pretty lackluster, honestly. His third and fourth abilities are where he really gets interesting. When he performs critical hits, every few critical hits, he does extra critical damage. And once you get him powered up, he gets some ability cooldown reduction to get him to his main ability faster. And then Gut Punch is an interesting one. He does a punch that deals a high amount of damage, and then if they're below a certain HP threshold, they just instantly die. And if they don't die, then they are pushed back. Omn Man is in a very similar situation to Adam Eve. Starting out, he's good. If you power him up, he's great, because his gut punch gets a much higher HP threshold of like 20% and just deals straight up more damage. His unstoppable ability, you'll get extra damage every 3 critical hits instead of more. He's good. He's really good. But unlike Invincible, who is just great out the box, Omn Man needs a little bit of help to get that power. I'm going to put him above Lucan, but under Adam Eve, because I feel like Adam Eve's ability is a bit more uniformly useful. And then again, big fat opinion on that one, kind of like with Alan and Monster Girl. Putting Omn Man in A might be a hot take. The only reason he's in A and not S is that to really get the most out of his abilities, he requires some investment. But I digress. Next, we're going to go over Red Rush, Mr. Speedy Man himself. His first ability is basically dealing damage and silencing the target for a bit. It also kind of does stop them. It's not like technically a stun, but it kind of does shut them down for a second. So just kind of something to keep in mind there. When he's fighting against attackers, his team gets increased critical damage by 10%. Now that's an interesting one, because here's the thing. A lot of the other ones that are like, oh, requires Married to the Mob, or requires original Guardians of the Globe characters, those are very specific. All this needs is to fight against an attacker, which you're almost always going to be fighting against at least one attacker, and you get a critical damage buff. And if you get it maxed out, it goes up from 10% all the way up to 45% critical damage buff, which is actually kind of okay. I mean, that's not horrible. Speed Demon here, once every 15 seconds, oh my goodness, say that 10 times fast. Red Rush swaps his own position with the farthest enemy, stunning them for 3 seconds and reducing their physical resistance. And then if you get it all the way powered up, that gets some interesting buffs where it actually will occur at the beginning of the battle and once every 15 seconds. That's an aggressively high stun. And here's the interesting thing. He swaps his own position with the farthest enemy. That means you could take their backline support character and immediately swap them out with him and put them in the lion's den of your own team. Like, let's say, literally, you could have a Universa or a Battle Beast there, swap out with their robot or something, and they just get immediately slammed and jammed. Plus, if you get it maxed out, it reduces their physical resistance by like 90%. Oh, actually, it is 90% even at base, actually. So slight error on my part on that one. That's at base. It just goes up to 4% at the end. That's pretty good, actually. And then his last ability, when an ally is below 25% HP, he grants them invincibility for 3 seconds. And then if you max it out at 30% HP, he grants them invincibility for 5 seconds and increases their critical chance. So it kind of plays into his second ability. He's another one where he's really good, but needs investment. And here's the thing too, I'd say his floor is a little bit lower than Adam Eve. He starts out a little worse than Adam Eve, and his max is not quite as good as max Adam Eve. But if you do invest in him, you won't be disappointed. So with that in mind, I'm going to put him up there with Green Ghost, because he is in kind of a same situation as Green Ghost. I'm going to put him a little above Green Ghost, but under Battle Beast. What Battle Beast does, he does really well, even at base. Red Rush needs a little bit of help to push him over the edge. Not a lot, but a little bit. Next, we have Rexplode. With Rexplode here, he's another rare character. His main ability, he just hucks a bomb and burns the enemy for some damage over time. When fighting against invaders, his team gets a 5% crit chance. And then when an enemy receives a critical strike, he throws a bomb that deals 20% base damage and burns them, dealing extra base damage over time. Nothing really crazy there, if we're being totally honest. We're going to put him in a low C under Aquarius, I'm thinking. Now, Robot. Oh, Robot. The quintessential support character, almost a mainstay on any team. He is by far the best character in the game just because of how much healing he can do. His main ability, Aerial Power, he gives healing to your entire team, no matter where they are, just straight up gives them healing, and then reduces the enemy's defenses at the same time. These only get better if you do get it powered up. His next ability, Married to the Mob, when fighting against Married to the Mob characters, increases team healing by 10%. Not actually all that crazy, if we're being honest. His Recharge ability, his third ability, he creates a healing aura around himself. A bit of a selfish heal because it's not that huge, but what it does well. And then his last ability is where he really gets good. He fires a couple of rockets that stun the enemy for 1 second and applies damage over time. And then if you get him powered up, it stuns them for 3 seconds. But let's be honest, it's that heal. It's the heal and the defense debuff on the enemy. His main ability just makes him complete already, and everything else is icing on the cake, especially the fact that he does actually get stuns in his last ability. That's pretty dang good. So for that, we're going to give him a high S. We're going to put him above Alan. Put him above Alan, but below Seismic, I'm thinking. I do have to give a word of caution, though, with Robot. Robot could be very easily power crept by somebody who gives more healing and has other abilities. Robot's mainstay is healing, which means that all you need to do to power creep Robot is whip out somebody with more healing. Just something to ponder, I would say. But that's just my opinion on that one. Next, we do have Russ Livingston, an old meat puppet being controlled by the Sequids. His main ability here deals damage based on his max HP to a pretty aggressive percentage, actually, and can stun the enemy. The stun is 1 second at level 1, all the way up to 10 seconds, or excuse me, level 10 is 2 seconds. That on its own is already a pretty freaking powerful ability, especially since it does scale on his HP. Next, he gets 5% lifesteal when attacking humans. You could pair that with somebody like Omn Man, kind of combine the lifesteals, and you're starting to get somewhere on that. That would be actually a decent bit of healing. Disorientation, his third ability. His next basic attack will inflict confusion for 1.5 seconds along with an attack reduction. And that goes up to 3 seconds of confusion and 5 seconds of attack reduction at level 10. A particularly potent debuff. Basically the mind control, the obedience collar artifact, but in an ability. Only instead of an attack buff, it's an attack reduction, which makes sense when you get it powered up. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with making your opponent attack their ally. Worst case scenario, it's basically a pseudo stun. Best case scenario, you mind control somebody like an Invincible, and he gets a few nasty hits on his allies. Yeah, that's pretty okay. And then his last ability, every time an enemy dies, he restores some HP, and then if you do get it powered up to at least level 5, each time an ally dies, he obtains a 5% defense buff. I mean, it's healing, it's some self-sustain, which is not a bad thing. But really, it's the confusion and the Sequids that do, or the Sequid column that does damage based on his max HP, that puts him pretty high up on the list. Interestingly, though, he's counted as a support, which I guess for the debuffs kind of makes sense. But does it, though? I don't know. That one, I think he's like more of a low-level attacker. I say low-level. I mean, I guess he's not a low-level attacker. He's a great attacker, just not all of his abilities are attack-focused. Which I guess makes him a support. I don't know. However, like I said, what he does freaking well. Part of me wants to put him in low S. Part of me wants to put him in high A. So I'm going to hedge my bets and put him in a high A. Now I am going to put him over Adam Eve because unlike Adam Eve, Russ is pretty complete out the box. So that's kind of something to keep in mind there. You don't need skill ups to make Russ work. But I hesitate to put him on the same level as somebody like Invincible. What he does really well. But we'll leave it at that. Next we have Shrinking Ray. Shrinking Ray is an interesting one. She is really hard to fight against, but doesn't do much when you actually use her. Well, that's a bit unfair to say. Let's get into her abilities. Her main ability, she shrinks and moves behind the target, attacking them and pushing them to her previous position while applying a defense debuff. Never a bad thing. She increases the human ally's defense for each attacker in the enemy team. It's actually a pretty decent defensive buff, starting out at 5%. Again, the enemy will almost always have at least one attacker, so not too bad. Shrinking Dodge is the interesting one. She is immune to stun or silence effects, and when these effects are applied to her, she moves to the next available enemy and stuns them for 2 seconds, and then does some damage over time. And that can go up to 3 seconds if you do max it out. There's something to be said for that. An immunity to stun and being able to apply a stun herself is pretty decent. And then after returning to her normal size, so after using Ray behind you or Shrinking Dodge, she receives a crit chance increase and an attack damage increase. And those stats go up if you do get her leveled up. See, here's the thing. I'm not going to put her on the level of Green Ghost. I'm going to put her at a high B. Now, she is a high B. What she does well. But she just doesn't do it as well as others. Like Green Ghost or Red Rush, I feel like are probably better at their respective roles than Shrinking Ray is. But I would still put Shrinking Ray higher than someone like Bulletproof. Yeah, I'd say so. Part of me almost doesn't want to put her above the Mauler twins, but Shrinking Ray doesn't require a specific team to work, so there's that too. Now then, we have the Immortal. This dude was a terror when the arena first came out. His first ability, he flies up and slams the ground, pushing and stunning the enemies for a couple seconds. That can go up as you get his skill leveled up. He reduces damage received from the Viltrumites by 5% for his team, and that can go up to, let's see here, 35%, which is interesting because I can't help but wonder, if you had 3 maxed out Immortals, would that just make the Viltrumites do no damage? It's a thought. A very expensive thought, but it's still a thought. Just a little food for thought there. When his HP reaches below a certain percentage, he becomes immune for 5 seconds. And then that can go up, or it doesn't go up past 5 seconds, but he does get an energy attack boost for that 5 seconds as well, if he does get that skill maxed out. And then when any ally gets healed, he also receives a healing effect, which basically just makes it so that he's much easier to heal, even if he's not directly receiving it. This dude was a terror in Arena before they added the tiebreaker feature. Still not perfect, but he does lose a bit of his mainstay, factoring in the fact that he can no longer just totally stall out teams. I'm going to put him, like, we're talking like a B+. He's a really good B, but still a B, in my opinion. Next we have Tether Tyrant. We'll make this quick, because he does not have a whole lot to write home about here. He unleashes tentacles, dealing damage in an area in front of him. He increases his defense by a little bit based on married to the mob characters. And he can create a little bit of a reflective shield. Anything he does, other characters do better. Don't bother. Next we have Thula. Thula, our attacker Viltrumite character, and an interesting one at that. First of all, her main ability, she stabs the target, dealing damage and applying a pretty beefy wound status over 10 seconds. Those stats go up as you get the skill powered up. Her ability, Lust for Death, is her most interesting one to me. She increases her attack by 50% for 5 seconds every time an ally or enemy Viltrumite dies in battle. If you get that maxed out, it goes up to 100%, so she increases her attack by 100% for 7 seconds every time an ally or enemy Viltrumite dies. I want to run a test so freaking bad to have a maxed out Lust for Death Thula in a team of just level 1 Viltrumites who will immediately die. Does that mean she would get 400% damage increase, or attack increase, for 7 seconds? She just becomes the greatest terror to ever live. It's a thought. It's a thought that I would love to pursue one of these days. Now then, Thula's basic attacks against enemies with a wound status gain a 30% lifesteal effect. That's a pretty good lifesteal, actually. That's much better. Especially if you pair her with other lifesteal characters. She can actually sustain herself pretty easily. And then Viltrumite makes right. Every 20 seconds, Thula and Lucan attack the target with less HP using a combined movement that deals 200% damage and stuns the enemy. If Lucan is in the same team, both heroes receive a 20% defense increase during 3 seconds after the attack. And then that stun goes up to 3 seconds. The attack can happen a little bit more often and comes with a higher defense buff. I mean, it's never a bad thing to have a stun. The ability also can be used at the beginning of the battle, once you get past level 5, so that's kind of a good break point, honestly. I mean, having a stun at the beginning of the fight and a hefty damage is no small feat. So, we're going to put Thula... I'm going to put her above Monster Girl, but under Invincible. The only reason I'm putting her under Invincible is that Invincible does have his invincibility shield, which does matter. But I'm just going to leave that at that. Now then, next we have Titan. Titan is kind of the baby defender of the crew because all the other defenders are kind of better than him, if we're being honest. But he is still really good at what he does. His main ability, he basically gets a shield and a taunt, which is no small feat. Defenders need taunts, it's a good thing. He decreases the enemy's healing effect by 5% when fighting against Guardians of the Globe, which is kind of meh. He gets a stun for his third ability. It's 1 second at level 1, and at level 10 it's 2.5 seconds. And then he gets more physical defense for every percentage of his missing HP. So basically, as he's taking more damage, he's getting stronger. He's okay. He is just okay. He's not bad. He's not great. So I'm actually going to put him... I'm going to put him above Shrinking Ray, but under the Immortal. The Immortal beats him out a little bit because the Immortal does have his invincibility effect. Which, yeah, that's just better. I mean, that's a trump card. Having an invincibility effect is just a trump card in that case. Unless you're Bulletproof, in which case it's a little too inconsistent for my liking. Next, we're going to go over Warwoman. Now, Warwoman actually got a pretty substantial buff from her initial iteration. Ooh, I've been talking a lot and my throat is getting parched. But we're almost done. We got 2 more characters. For her main ability, she targets a random enemy and spins at him, dealing 300% damage over 2 seconds. That effect goes up to a whopping 865% damage over 5 seconds. Which is a lot of damage, I won't deny. That's pretty good. She increases her team's attack by 1.5% for each original Guardians of the Globe character. That can go up to 4% at level 10. So basically, as long as she's in a team of original Guardians of the Globe characters, the team does more damage. Which there's something to be said for that. When Warwoman receives a critical hit, she gains life leech and a 5% attack damage boost. So basically, she kind of gets ticked off if she gets hit with a crit. It's okay, it's inconsistent, so nothing crazy, but the attack boost is still decent. And then the last hit of Warwoman's Warricane, which is the first ability, stuns all surrounding enemies for 1 second and deals some extra damage. That goes up to 3 seconds if you do get her powered up. Like I said, she got some really good buffs. Not enough to make her crazy, though. So I think we're going to kind of put her in the same realm as, like, the Immortal and Titan. I'm going to put her under the Immortal, honestly. We're going to put her right there. Over Titan, but under the Immortal. What she does well. But it's really nothing crazy, if I'm being honest. I'm also going to be a little mean here, and I'm going to put Damian Darkblood onto C. I see. Just because I like that the tier list stays to one line. I am OCD like that. And now, we have one more character. The one, the only, the favorite. Universa. Yes, it's time to talk about Universa. First of all, her main ability deals an electric shockwave that deals damage to all enemies and decreases their energy defense. And then, if you power it up a little bit, she gets an electric field around herself that can deal damage to the enemies. And then even if she gets it more stronger, she can even get a silence effect. At base, pretty dang good. Pretty dang good energy, or pretty good energy damage. And if you get it powered up, it's really good. Her energy transfer ability is the only one that's a little bit odd. She increases her crit chance by 6% for each last line of defense ally defeated during the battle. So basically, if you're on a team with like Invincible or Omn Man, if one of them croaks, she gets crit chance. Pardon me. My throat's dying over here. I'm talking a lot. Crit chance is good. Crit chance is very good. Because of her other abilities. But the fact that it's kind of contingent on death hurts a little bit. Pardon me. Her third ability, Energy Surge. Once every few seconds, she charges up to receive a crit chance boost and some life leech. Basically, making it so that she can do crits more often and sustain herself a little bit. And then her last ability is the most important. When she performs a basic critical hit, the lightning ray bounces from enemy to enemy. Starts out at 1, but if you do get it maxed out all the way, it goes up to 4 times, meaning that you can effectively fry the entire team. Now, logically, she does require a little bit of investment to really work. But at base, she still does a very healthy amount of damage. So, I'm going to put her under Alan, but over Invincible. No, I'll put her over Alan. Seismic and Robot are just so good at what they do. I can't put her above them. But Universa is still fantastic. And that is the tier list. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm feeling pretty okay about it. Some of these takes are a little harder than others, I think. I'll be very interested to know what you think down in the comments below. Tell me if there's anything here you agree with or vehemently disagree with. If you have not already liked the video and subscribed to the channel, I'm going to go drink some water, and we shall see you next time. Have a good one.